Good afternoon, and thank you again for joining us. We're delighted to have you back for another year, or if it's your first webinar with us, welcome. Thanks for joining us. So today we want to focus on the design editors, primarily the email design editor. However, at the same time, there are some personalization aspects to the design editor that we wanted to sort of drill into today to show you. So, excuse me, if there are any other questions, obviously feel free to ask those as we go through. But our focus today will be looking at some of the personalization aspects of the design editors. So just to introduce, my name is Derek Bell. I'm your host for today, and I look after our marketing and customer success here at Marketing Cube. And I'm joined by Adrian Jones, who is our CEO and founder. And Adrian's going to be helping manage chat, etc. today. So please use the chat, and we'd love to also, just to help us with a little bit of feedback, feel free to give thumbs up, etc., or any other those sort of little emoticons that you can throw up on the screen through Zoom. We'd love to get that. So, hey, thank you. We just got a nice little love heart pop up. Appreciate that. Okay. All right. So what's our plan for the next 45 minutes? So there were some submitted questions. At this point, there were no submitted questions from your side of the world, but there were two from here in Asia Pac, and I kind of thought they were pretty relevant for everybody. So I'll share those as well and walk you through those. Then we'll dive into the design editor. So the first promise was to just have a quick overview, and that will be a very quick overview of the design editor. But then what we want to do is drill into the dynamic content and field mergers. And I want to show you some practical examples. And I'm actually going to be using the Eloqua User Group emails. That is the emails that you have received in order to join us today. And I'll show you some of the things we do in there, which does differ month to month, but I'll show you what we've done this month, for example. Then look at content blocks and signatures. Content blocks, while they're not dynamic, etc., they can contain field mergers, but they can also be helpful from a personalization point of view, and then also signatures. And just some tips, I suppose, to think about in relation to signatures and what you want to do there. Now, of course, some of you will be live on release 25A if you're on pod 1. You will be live already, and other pods are following, and also pod 7, but that's mostly Asia Pac customers on pod 7. And then Q&A, but as is normally the case, Q&A is live throughout, so please feel free to ask questions, or in fact, use the chat. And I want to try and use that chat a little bit more this year in getting some feedback from you as we move through the session. So please, it'd be great to get you engaged through that. All right. So the questions we had. So this is from Alex. Alex is actually based here in Sydney, and he asked a question in the context of sort of re-engagement campaigns. And there certainly are a few blog posts on our website that you can find in relation to re-engagement campaigns and ideas. But he does have a specific group that he's focusing on here for the re-engagement, which is important contacts who are not engaging or engaging less with email. Sure. So what do you do? So the first challenge, I think, is we need to think about that audience in a little bit more detail. And he's done that, right? So really that first point that I've got there, Alex has definitely done that. He's identified that group. But I would suggest to you that you could still go deeper. Now, depending on the size of that audience, what I typically like to do is create a segment, identify the audience holistically. Then I usually export it out to Excel with some information in it that helps me understand job title, geography details, job category, industry, those sorts of details that kind of help me get a little bit better idea of who they are. The reason I do it in Excel is only that I can see them all on the page together on a nice big screen. I can apply my filters and kind of drill in there a little bit. And then once I've done, I pretty much delete that file and then return to Eloqua and then start to look at how I can present messages to subsets of those groups. Because if you have in there, for example, let's take the B2B world, if you have a bunch of senior executives, maybe vice president, president, CEO type folks in there, along with individual contributors and executives at a junior level, then how you reach out to them and the messages you give are going to be quite different. And the same would probably be from the point of view of maybe a membership-based organization or a university, for example. You want to be able to tailor, because remember, the people you're targeting are not engaging today. So whatever you do is going to have a really good hook. to get them engaged. And there's probably going to have to be some sort of an offer, excuse me, an offer in there to entice them back into engagement, I suppose. The other thing to think about in this context, I think, is that necessarily bombarding these people with more emails may not be the best option. Maybe a different channel is good. If you've got the ability to reach out to some of these people through advertising in LinkedIn, for example, or wherever, that may be another channel worth exploring. And it's probably also good to sit with the sales team or whoever kind of owns the relationship and maybe even do a little bit of prioritizing at an account level as to how you might reach out to some of these people. And it could be a phone call because email may not be working. So maybe it's a phone call. There are other things at play. So there's a wider strategy at play there. Email just happens to be one of the channels that you're using. And it's the channel right now with this particular group that isn't performing. Think a bit broader, utilize your colleagues to get you some ideas on how to engage with that particular group. But as I said, there's some blog posts there as well on our website, and I'll see if I can remember to put those in some communications to you. The next one came from Abba, who's based here in Australia and works in the international university marketing sector. And they're using Oracle Service Cloud, and she wanted to know about the two-way data flow. And I imagine there'll be maybe people on the call today who are also using Oracle CX Service or Oracle Service Cloud, or if you've been around a really long time, you might remember it as Right Now is the product name. The answer is yes, essentially, to Abba's question, because she had come from an environment where it was a little bit different, now using Eloqua with Oracle Service Cloud. And so, yeah, as I said here, the quick answer is yes, absolutely. You've got the two-way integration, but the better answer is for me to ask more questions. Maybe that's the consultant in me. What you don't want to do with any integration is just bring everything over. You want to make sure that what you're bringing over is relevant and timely and all those sorts of things. And it's going to help you personalize better and help you segment your database better. And those two fundamental points relate to any integration, really, that you're doing with Eloqua. All right, so let's push that over. Now, overview of the design editors. So fundamentally, we need to remember that the interface that you use to build your emails is really identical to your landing pages. There really is no difference, except one produces a landing page and the other produces an email, okay? I think by design, and it's a great design, I think, you can seamlessly really move between one and the other. Once you get down how to build an email, the transition to building a landing page is pretty simple. There's a few extra things you can do, but fundamentally the process is exactly the same. So for this session, or this part of today's webinar, I really just wanted to jump straight into Eloqua and show you what we're doing. All right, so for those of you who may not know what Redwood is, when you log into Eloqua today, the default is that the Redwood experience is in fact turned on. You can turn it off by removing the check if you choose to, but we're now starting to see where enhancements that are arriving from Eloqua are only being built in Redwood. The classic example is now we have template managers, excuse me, that is for forms and segments. That's not available in the classic navigation. Just an FYI on that one. But let's jump into the design editors. We arrive at email, and first thing you'll notice from a Redwood experience, yes, it is a little bit different in the way that it looks, but fundamentally it's the same. You've got all sorts of fun things you can do over here. Accessing your all view, which is what we're looking at the moment. You can move to favorites. Favorites pop out like so, and you can navigate off just as you would have done previously. But the other thing is the archived area and templates is up here in the top left-hand corner as well. So that can be missed if you're new to Redwood and can't quite find where things are. Under the actions area, you can go straight to dashboards, and this is where you would upload an email. So if you are using an external agency to potentially, or even internal skills to build emails externally and upload them to Eloqua, that's where you would go now to do that process. But let's dive into the editor. Yeah, so what I wanted to do was show you the email that this was the invitation email that many of you would have received in order to be here today. So what have we got? Across the top, we've got basically 4 areas: the design components, which is helping you build out the various chunks, so the layout areas of Eloqua, which you see highlighted in the orange. And from these, we can duplicate sections, we can trash them, we can create content blocks from here directly as well by clicking on any of these, not any, but clicking on the block or the cube right there. All of these various options that you've got, text, you'll be very familiar with, image, adding a button. I tend to use content blocks to add my button because the generic button that you add when you drag in this one is like so. And that's kind of the default. And there's no configuration to adjust the default. So I very rarely use that because I either have my buttons all built into the templates, so I don't need to do anything. But if I do want one, I can actually just go over here into content blocks, type in the word button, and you'll see there's a few buttons there for me to choose from, and they're kind of all ready and set to go with our styling and so on and so forth. So it's just a nice little shortcut you can play with. Then you've got the divider, which you can see is in action right here with some options for padding, color, borders, all the usual fun stuff. Shared content, there's no shared content in this particular piece, but shared content, remember, can be used in an email or on a landing page. Just need to design it to behave accordingly. But again, it's just a matter of dragging it in and then locating your shared content. And you're ready to go. Oops, let me get rid. Actually, that's a good point. So I want to delete just the content. So you'll notice the content has this kind of bluey, purpley color versus the layout section, which is the orangey type of color. Okay, so I just want to get rid of the content. So I click on that, then I'm going to click on trash can, like so, to remove it. Dynamic content, exactly the same behavior. Video. Now, video here in an email, essentially all it's going to do, and I rarely use this one in email, by the way, is you grab your URL from your YouTube or Vimeo account, and you can drop it straight in, and you can just paste it right here. So what it's going to do in the email, it's not going to play in the email, but what it will do is pull through the featured image from your YouTube or Vimeo account. And so as soon as the person clicks on it, they'll then go from the email directly to YouTube or Vimeo. And my general preference is to try and keep people away from YouTube. YouTube is great. We have a lot of content there, and that's how a lot of people find us. But once they begin to engage, I prefer to control the experience and have them visit our videos that I share with them, at least through our landing pages, our Eloqua landing pages. So I can control that further. I can personalize more. I know they're there. I know what they're watching, those sorts of things. So it just helps from a reporting and an overall analytics point of view. Cloud content relates to different apps that you can add. So you may have third-party apps installed in Eloqua, and it's through cloud content that you add certain functionality to your emails or landing pages. So signature is this one here at the bottom. Now, we'll talk more about signatures later this afternoon. And then you've got custom code. So if for any reason you needed or wanted to add any type of custom code and you know how to do that, then you can use the custom code piece as well. Sometimes I've seen that used. There are numerous websites, for instance, that will give you countdown timers, for example, that are hosted obviously on another website. They generate the code for you, and you can just drop it straight in. Another one is Google Maps. So Google Maps enable you to add code. I use that one probably more so on a landing page, really. So it gives me a live map versus just doing a screenshot of a map. So that way the map is live. Great for events when you're having people come to a physical venue. They can get that reminder email and they can click on that, and then it takes them directly to Google Maps. So it's a much nicer experience. And of course, anything you can do to help them get there is a good thing. Now, in relation to other things you can do here, we'll talk more about these shortly, but obviously personalization from field mergers. You'll see there's a few field mergers here. This is in fact dynamic content. Again, we'll talk more about this shortly. This is also dynamic content, and I'll explain to you all of this when we move through a little bit further shortly. Now, you can move anything around as well. So these little 6 dots that you see on the left are kind of handles. So you can either move just the content or you can move the layout. So the layout, moving the layout is helpful when, for example, here we have 2 pieces of content. We have some text and we have the horizontal line, and I want to move both. So I can actually just click and drag and then move them accordingly. like so. So you can kind of play around with those, which does make things a bit easier to play with. If you decide you want to create columns, that's what the plus icons are for on the left and the right. So you can do that. Now, when you do that, just keep in mind, Eloqua does add, I'm really not sure why it does it, but it adds this little tiny spacer, which is in fact 5 pixels. And if you're super concerned and you're thinking a lot about what your email looks like from a mobile point of view, then you've just added 10 pixels, okay, top and bottom. So wherever I added that, where did I do it? Actually, I think that's hidden. No, it's not. There we go. So we look at what's on this month, and there it is right there. So there's a little 10 pixels there and a little 10 pixels. And maybe I hid the other one, or is it there? Anyway, so what you can do is you can either just simply get rid of it. So if you delete them and hit on the trash, etc., and again hit on the trash, that's one way to do it. If that's visually too much for you, you don't like it. Keeping in mind when you send your email, nothing is rendered there. It's completely blank, but it does bring the spacing in as you requested. What I tend to do, and you might see it up here, for example, I just add a piece of content. And I think that one's already hidden on mobile. So you can see over here on the left-hand side, you've got the option there to hide on mobile. And so that's exactly what I've done. And so now I just duplicate that and drag it over like so. That's all. It just gives you a little bit more control over what you're doing. And of course, you can get rid of them anyway, like so. So yeah, you have lots of flexibility with that. Even if you take one of these and drop them in one of the layout sections with the 3 columns, if you then decide, well, in fact, I only want 2, that's fine. You can just use the left or right arrows to diminish that and change it and adjust your columns to whatever you need them to be. So there's a tremendous amount of flexibility in what you're doing there. We tend to find from an overall width point of view, we've selected 756 as our default for all of our communications. The primary reason for that was years ago, I remember sitting with a client at their office and how they were engaging with email. And they had their laptop and an external monitor, etc. They're using Outlook, like many do in corporate. And they had the emails on the left-hand side, sort of incoming, etc. And then the preview pane over here on the right-hand side. And the 600 pixel wide email looked like this skinny little communication in the middle with all this massive real estate on either side. And then the list over here. I'm thinking, why are we going with 600? I think we go with 600 because for many, many years, that's what everybody has always done. And just because people have always done it doesn't mean we have to keep doing it, right? So you've got that flexibility. 900, I feel, is a bit too wide. And 1080 is probably in the out of control category for me. So 756 was a compromise on that. So it gives me a little bit more real estate to play with, which is not so much about putting in more information. It's just about probably having a bit more space from a visual point of view. So yeah, 756 pixels is our default that we use on all of our communications with Eloqua. So the other key aspects, of course, to an email are the headers and footers. In this case, our headers are fairly simple. It's, if it doesn't look amazing, read the online version. And the footers are pretty standard for those who receive our communications. Links to unsubscribe, manage your subscriptions, maybe you want to update your details, the social buttons, copyright, blah, blah, blah. Those sorts of things are all here in the footer. So keeping in mind with your headers, depending on what you're doing, there's no reason why you can't include an image in your header, or potentially it's your logo. Your logo sits in the header area as well, which then saves you a little bit of time and then also ensures consistency as well in relation to where your logo is placed in all communications that you're sending out to people. So you've got some options there to play with. Now you'll notice at Marketing Cube, we have started to tailor our banners. If you access our comms on mobile, that is, you might have noticed the difference. But when you basically put in a JPEG or a PNG file and it's a certain width, then when you go to mobile, if it's 756 pixels wide, the best it can do, obviously, is just to condense it. And so if there's a strong call to action there, then it could get lost on mobile. So what we've done is we've elected to hide that on mobile and display this. So this is now a tailored piece, which is only 500 pixels wide, which I've come to identify as probably being the optimal width for images on a mobile. And it just, yeah, it gets the bold message there in front of people. It does mean creating two pieces of artwork. Now here at Marketing Cube, I'm a marketing team of one and a bit, and it literally adds maybe a minute or two to the artwork creation process. It's not that long. It's really not that difficult. So something to think about as well. But you probably want to look at how many people are actually accessing your content via mobile to see what you think is the overall benefit potentially of doing that. Okay. Let's jump into the next step, which is now looking a little bit more specifically at dynamic content and field merges, which were some that I kind of shared with you there just a moment ago. But let's jump in. I figured this needs just a little bit of thinking because this term personalization, I mean, I don't know about you, but there's hardly a day goes by or maybe a week goes by that there's not something in my inbox from some really smart people talking about personalization and how we need to do it and what's to be done, etc. For me, though, as an Eloqua user, I fundamentally look at personalization in two ways or two parts, as I've got here. The first one is the very overt use of data to present back to people. And that's classically what a field merge is, right? You're taking data from a contact record, an account record, or a custom object record. You're taking the contents of those particular fields, and first name is the obvious one, or company name, etc. And you're field merging that value directly into an email or onto a landing page. And so it's clear, it's obvious, it's kind of personalization 101, I suppose. The thing that sometimes I find is missing is that those who are writing the copy, and that may not be you, right? So depending on the size of your organization, you may have copywriters who are writing this copy. The problem is so much of the copy is written as if, and I don't mean this to belittle the copywriters because I just think about how I was thinking. It's almost like you're writing the high school newsletter and you're writing it and it's going out to 1,000 parents, etc. Not going to Mr. and Mrs. Smith or to Mary Smith, but it's just going to 1,000 parents. And it's written in that way. So there's no personalization. It doesn't say, "Dear Mrs. Smith, we love having Johnny at the school and little Jane is doing a great thing," and blah, blah, blah. There's none of that level of personalization in there. Now, of course, with something like Eloqua, you can absolutely do something like that. And those school newsletters could be hyper-personalized in relation to what's going on and the way you talk to people. So I think the way we write copy could be enhanced, but the copywriters need to have clarity and understand what's actually available to them so that as they're writing their copy, they can propose that field mergers be used in various portions of the copy that they're developing. So that's a thought for you to think about. Okay. The second way I think about personalization is taking that same data from the contact, account, or custom object, but now we're going to use it to drive the specific personalization functions within Eloqua. So we're going to identify the country field. And using the country field, we want to present different imagery potentially. So it's dynamic content on how we might do that. Now, of course, dynamic content can also contain a field merge, so we can kind of work the two in. So I'll show you again here in a moment that in a little bit more detail. I want to show you some specific examples as well as to how we do it. I'm going to use the user group emails. Now, most of you work in high value sort of B2B environment. So whether it's a university, which is strictly not B2B, but it is certainly a high value environment. People are paid a lot of money to participate in various courses at university. You might be selling Ferraris or BMWs or expensive vehicles, etc. You may work in mining. You may work in finance. There's a whole range of areas, but in that B2B environment, you're dealing with a buyer who you're asking to spend considerable amounts of money with you. And I think we need to think about how we can personalize better. And for many, even starting with first name is a struggle. And if that's a struggle for you, and that might be because of data quality, maybe an absence of even having a first name to talk to people. So there's a goal, obviously, try and get some first names, use campaigns to drive that potentially. But I'll show you how we can use some dynamic content that can cover that for you. So if in fact there is no first name, there is a way that we can manage around that without having emails look odd because a name or a field merge is missing and is in fact blank. The example I've used here is, you may want to use that underlying data to actually include or exclude someone from a campaign. That's still personalizing, even though they're not getting anything. But the fact that you're not inundating them potentially with something that's not relevant, I would consider that's still personalization. They'll just never know, but you know. All right, proactively identifying people for a campaign based on new data. So more recent engagement with your various assets or campaigns in your mind may then qualify someone to be put into a campaign. So that again, I think is personalization because we're thinking about individuals and what they might be interested in. Adjusting copy or imagery on assets, emails or landing pages is the no-brainer, and that's the one that we're going to explore in a bit more detail here. So this one, I would argue, is it's subtle. It's not so obvious to people, depending on how overt you make it. A comment that some people may make is that you just get me, okay? Your comms just seem to resonate. They just hit the mark. That's great. Well, that's personalization working, right? We're being smarter about what we're doing in the way we're reaching people. And you may find that if you're doing more personalization at this level, then segment sizes could reduce. It's not about hitting the entire database. It's about carving out sections of the database using these two aspects of personalization to get the right audience together. Okay. So let's get personal. I was trying to think of how we might gauge our level of personalization as Eloqua users. So I sat with one of our tech team guys, Thomas, to throw some of these ideas at him. And so we kind of arrived at 3 levels. So if we're doing it basically, it's maybe it's from name in each email is a bit more personalized instead of just your company brand. Subject lines, maybe you're popping field merges in there. Field merging any data really from across Eloqua would be certainly a basic level of what we're trying to achieve. And certainly pre-population of forms. Now, that's an out-of-the-box Eloqua function, but are you using it is a good thing to understand. At an intermediate level, so maybe now we're switching email or landing page content using dynamic content. So we're being a bit more targeted, a bit more specific. Maybe you're using data from custom objects to deliver this. So a lot of people will use contact and maybe account information. Not everybody will think to use the data in your custom objects, which can often be highly tailored. So you need to look at that data and understand what's going on. Applying the dynamic email signatures. So you can apply a static signature. That's pretty easy, but are you using the dynamic approach to email signatures? And then applying or combining dynamic content and field merges to change email subject lines. It's great to use field merges in a subject line. We know there's definitely good numbers to suggest that helps in relation to opens. People respond. But what about using dynamic content and field merges in a subject line? So one email with multiple subject lines, depending on the people that you're talking to. And at an advanced level, yeah, it kind of keeps going, right? You can just do a whole range of different things, moving people from one campaign to another, recommending content based on recent engagement. There's a whole lot of magic involved in there, by the way, with custom objects and programs and dynamic content and all sorts of things. We've done this with some of our higher education clients around a next best action scenario. So if a person has done A and B and C, then we can suggest that they move on to D because we know what they've done and this would be the next best thing for them to do. Or maybe the next best is from a range of things for them to do. And so we can use some logic to present those to people. And then I suppose you would call that hyper-personalization to a large degree. So I just wanted to give you a bit of a feel for where you might sit in the scheme of things from a level of personalization. But let's jump in, and I want to show you some examples, 3 specific examples of what we're trying to do. So I'm going to use this same email, but now just dive into it in a little bit more detail. The first one is this one right here. And this is a piece of dynamic content. And this piece of dynamic content sits across pretty much everything that we do, every communication that goes out the door. So what we've done, and I'll just zoom in here so you can see a little bit better, is first of all, there's a default. And the default is simply hello first name with a little comma at the end, okay? Then the next one, and this is the one I wanted to cover that I mentioned here just a minute ago, was what if we don't have a first name? Okay, well, that's fine. So Eloqua can help me understand that. So I use the plus sign over here to look at compare contact fields. That's what you're looking at right here. And I'm asking Eloqua, give me any contacts where the first name field is blank. Now, if it's blank, the thing that I clearly can't do is field merge because there's nothing to merge. The field is blank. And so what I'm trying to avoid is Eloqua delivering an email where there's this awkward space between hello and you can see my Grammarly is popping up and saying, no, you can't do that. Yeah, I know Grammarly. That's okay. So that's what we're going to deliver. Hello, good morning. I can't do good morning, good afternoon, because it just gets too complicated with all of our time zones. So we just stick with hello. And so that's how we can easily cover off if we don't have a first name. So if that's what it looks like in your world, and you don't have good first name field population, then that's fine. Let's not penalize the portion of your database who have provided a first name. Let's use their first name. Let's talk to them, but let's not penalize everybody because of some data lacking in certain areas. Now, what we've done here is we've now tried to localize this based on geography. So for our friends in New Zealand, we've said kia ora, etc. And then we kind of move through. You can see we've got Tagalog, which is from the Philippines. And the reason we're able to do this at Marketing Cube is because we have really good quality data based on geography, assuming the person has told us that they are, in fact, in the country that they've selected from the drop-down pick list, then they'll get it right. So we go through this. Now, I can keep adding to this. You may ask, well, what about all the other countries? Well, that's a great question. But what I've done here is essentially looked at our database, taken a good look at where people are from largely, and I have added to this, by the way, as our database grows and different people come into our database. I'm like, okay, hang on a minute, we've got a French bunch of French folks there, and of course with French, I could look at where is it the primary language, and so you can see it actually covers in quite a few places that would in fact be French, just using some logic here of or in between. So that's just one example. So the field merging of your greeting or salutation is often just woven into the first paragraph. At Marketing Cube, that's not how we do it. We have first name as its own standalone piece that is dropped into to emails. All right, so the next one. So you've got to remember, as you would be aware, this email goes to all of our subscribers. And from month to month, it's tailored in relation to kind of who sees what. There's always a default. For our friends in the European market right now, so it's late mid to late afternoon on the East Coast in US and Canada right now, but in Europe, which is other people who attend this webinar, it's evening. I think in London it's up to, or maybe in Berlin, I think it's up to 9 p.m. So super cool that if they're online and attending. I'm just kind of looking down our quick list here. That's great, but awkward during the summer. It's just hard to get a time zone that suits for everybody. So what we've done here is we've identified a default rule, but for our friends in EMEA, and we use a field in Eloqua called region, which is a custom field that we've created. So we identified those within EMEA, Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And what we've said here, we really appreciate that this time doesn't really work across your region. It's Australian summer, et cetera, but please take time to register. We'll always make sure we get the replays to you, and we look forward to you joining us live when the seasons change and summertime, et cetera, and all that kind of fun stuff. Because I felt it was awkward sending a communication to our European friends or across EMEA, I should say, inviting them to a webinar at sort of 8 p.m., 9 p.m., 10 p.m. their time. That just felt a bit naff from my point of view. But at the same time, they proactively subscribed And so I wanted to respect that and make sure they weren't left out, and gave them an avenue to participate. And so that's where some dynamic content can really come in handy. It prevents you from having to build a whole other email, and you can tailor it, etc. And there's specific reporting that you can get within Insight around dynamic content, where you can see the results of the email overall, and excuse me, and then see the breakdown of how the dynamic content has performed, if there's clicks and other things that you might put in there. Now, this is the fun one. So what I found, this is also dynamic content. So if I click on this one is again based on geography. And so what I was trying to avoid here was previously, and those of you who have been subscribed for a while, we ended up with this crazy long list. What I was wanting to do was give people a time that resonated with them because it was their local time. I mean, I get these emails all the time, and it's always 4 a.m. West Coast USA, and it never shows anything in Australian Eastern Time. So I'm like, well, yeah, sorry, that's me working out. It's at 4 a.m. Eastern. It's usually 10 a.m. West Coast time, for example. And so that's the objective here, is to try and show people what time the webinar is taking place in their local time. And so again, it's by being able to use the country field, again, really good quality data from our point of view, as to how we're able to present that. And so we just use that to kind of break things down. Now, it doesn't cover every country on the planet, but again, what I've done is focused on people who I know are in our database, and hopefully we can get it right. If we can't get it right, well, then what I've done is got a default. And so you always have a default. That's it. Now, your default can in fact be blank, which doesn't work in this scenario, but sometimes having a blank default works perfectly for what you're trying to do. So we're covered. Everybody's covered. If I don't have a specific country listed here, then that's fine. They're covered and they'll receive the default value. So you can see when you step back and look at this particular email, so we have dynamic content in the greeting. We have dynamic content in this example, kind of in that opening paragraph area. And then we have dynamic content delivering the start times. Now, as a user, you'll notice here you've got the ability to move through and have a look at each of those. What you can also do is preview your email in the context of a particular client. Trying to avoid I think I've got have I got an EU? No, I haven't. Do I have EMEA? Trying to see if I've got let's do USA. I've got Derek USA. Yeah, here we go. So I can click on that. So now what I'm previewing is, excuse me. And so here it is. It's showing me the dynamic content. And I'm in the US, so I'm seeing the standard or default invitation right there, and I'm seeing just the details for the US and EMEA episode. So you can preview all of that here directly within Eloqua. Okay. Are there any questions on any of those points that we've just looked at? Okay, we're almost finished here, and I'm certainly out of time. So the next one is personalization around looking at content blocks and how they can help. So the key thing I wanted to show you here is basically there are two ways you can, well, multiple potentially, but two ways I use content blocks. One is where I just want to bring in a sort of pre-built on-brand lorem ipsum, etc., where I'm now going to add and edit, etc., and play with that. And so I'll spend a little bit of time working on it. The other way we use content blocks is to present content from past events, for example. And so this is ready to go. I don't have to do anything to this. I can just simply drop this into my email or my landing page, and it's ready to go. All the hyperlinks, etc., and so on and so forth are all there. So there are a couple of ways you can play with it. So that's how I tend to use content blocks. There are, as I said, multiple ways you may do it, but it certainly is a great one to save time, and certainly is a good one to just deliver more consistency, both visually with what you're doing. So if you have thought leadership, for example, that you may want to drop into this newsletter or that invitation, or maybe slip something into a confirmation email to give people a little bit more content. It's something relevant from a thought leadership that relates to an upcoming event, then you don't have to spend time creating or reinventing the wheel. You've already got it here on a content block, and it's a piece of high value content. Brilliant. Let's drop that in and drive people off. And once you drop it in, you can manipulate and change and edit and move things around if you need to make it more tailored to your audience. So you've got plenty of functionality to play with from that point of view. The other one we want to look at was signatures. So I'll just go quickly from here. The signatures are a great tool, and signatures work in three parts. What we're looking at right now is what's referred to as the signature layout. And so if I click on edit, we're taken to the editor. Now, these editors are all changing as of the middle of this year, which is exciting. But essentially, these field merge information from the user profile area of Eloqua and then bring that in and personalize it. Any signatures really work best and most effectively when your Eloqua is integrated with a CRM platform, where in the CRM platform, you've got ownership. So you look at a contact or a lead in the CRM platform, and it's owned by a member of your organization. That concept also exists at the account level as well. So even at the account level, you have owners. If you're sending out communications, what we can do is automate the process that the owner of the account, the contact, or the lead, you determine which one, and it can be different for each campaign, by the way, you determine which one is which. That will then mean that this email is one email going to potentially 10,000 people coming from one of 45 salespeople across your organization. And Eloqua works it out based on the CRM integration and all of the information that's contained therein. So does it work? Yes, it does work. Quick example, several years ago, working with a client in real estate, specifically in apartments, and in Sydney, those apartments are expensive. And so it's a high value purchase. And they wanted to get some emails out on a Saturday because a brand new apartment was being listed and would be open for people to come and have a look at. And we're talking, I don't know, maybe 100 or so units. So lots of salespeople involved. So instead of sending out the emails, which they normally had done from their brand, which they had done pretty much up to date, they wanted to try signatures, see if it made a difference. It really did make a difference. The feedback that the CMO got over the weekend and on the Monday from the sales team was, what did you guys do differently? I had people calling me directly. I had emails sitting in my inbox. I was able to respond to. I was able to schedule more meetings. I was able to have great conversations, etc. The message there over the years, what I've observed is don't overdo it. Don't use the signature function so much that the recipients start to see it as almost spam in their inbox. You want them to see that the email has come from, Mary Jane or John Smith or whoever it is at XYZ company, and recognize, okay, there's something of value in that communication for me, and it's personalized. Try and avoid slick marketing looking emails. This is just my general advice. It could be different in your world, but use it carefully in a measured way. And make sure the sales team are aware you're using it is the other exercise as well. So they know how to respond and to potentially expect information arriving. Okay, so I am a little bit over time, but just very quickly in relation to changes for 25A, the release is underway at the moment. Those on Pod 1 have already gone live last weekend, and other pods will follow before the middle of February. So we would love to get some feedback from you. We have had some feedback already from some of you, so thank you if you've done that. One of the questions we ask is topics for this year and what you would like covered. And so far, these are the top 3 that have been requested. So if you like those, that's great. You can also take the survey and submit your responses, and maybe you have other topics that you would prefer. So please feel free to take that. I'll show you that QR code here again in just a moment. Okay, one of the big things with Redwood is they've referred to it as the addition of folder path breadcrumbs. I refer to it as the restoration of folder path breadcrumbs. Segment and form template managers. We'll cover these probably in a bit more detail next month, but you can now use segment and form template managers just as you have with emails and landing pages for many years. This, I think, is tremendously exciting. I'll talk more about it in the blog post as to my reasoning behind that. Shared list and signature rule editors, what's changed there is not so much what they do, but the Redwood look and feel has been applied to those environments. And updates to the contact record fold out. This is, I don't have time to show you, but when you go into the contact now in Redwood and look at it, there's just a little bit more real estate, which is good. The email groups was this big long list. Now it slides out from the right-hand side and it's much easier to look at. It's all there on the screen in front of you versus having to scroll. So that was some specific feedback from customers, which they've listened to, which was great. Custom object records. I'm still trying to work this one out. I'll come back to you in the blog post with more details on how this actually works. But fundamentally, what we're trying to do here, I believe, is if you delete a contact from Eloqua, you're able to delete at the same time any custom object data that might be related to that contact, which is important from a data privacy point of view and holding on to data and all those sorts of things. And when a customer or someone says, please remove me from all of your systems, well, we want to make sure we remove them from all of the systems. Other custom object updates, they're available, and that's now in controlled availability. Was in controlled availability. The LinkedIn Campaign Manager app. Could I maybe just get some thumbs up from those of you who are using the LinkedIn Campaign Manager app today, just out of curiosity? What's happened now is you have the ability to match on company audiences, which is something you haven't been able to do previously. So if that's an app that you're playing with, this is a slightly new angle, which I think is kind of cool. It will be interesting to see the results. We certainly have some clients here in the Asia Pac space who do use the LinkedIn Campaign Manager app fairly well and have had good success with that. And so now looking at it to focus company names is even better. So we look forward to that in a bit more detail. Okay, so join us next month in March. Happy to hang around for Q&A. So before you dive off, and I apologize for taking a bit more time than I should have, next month we're looking at guided campaigns, which you may or may not have heard about. So guided campaigns is a way for your less proficient Eloqua users. So think about maybe you've got remote teams and they primarily push out newsletters, for example. And so they don't really need complete access to all of Eloqua. And maybe if we gave them a more guided experience, it would make life a little bit easier for them and sort of simplify the process, but still enable them to maximize all the rich functionality that Eloqua's got. That's guided campaigns, and that's a very high-level explanation. And we'll talk more about that next month, Wednesday, 5th of March, 3 p.m. Eastern. Meanwhile, have a wonderful rest of your afternoon, and I'm happy, as I said, to hang around here. If you do have any questions, I've just spotted one sitting in the Q&A from Laurie. Hello, Laurie. Sorry for, how long did I miss that? Okay, I thought the LinkedIn app was just discontinued. Oh, absolutely not. No, must be a different one, Laurie, for sure. So yeah, this is just an enhancement that's been added this month. So yeah, it must be a different one that has been discontinued. But thank you for answering or asking that question. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your day. As I said, happy to hang around if you do have any questions. And if not, I look forward to seeing you next month. Thanks so much for joining us.